Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the New York Academy of Art. I'm David Kratz. I'm the president and a graduate of the school, and I'm really, really pleased to have you all here tonight, and thrilled, absolutely thrilled to have Jerry Saltz and Mickalene Thomas with us in the house. Give them a round of applause. Absolutely. I will tell you that I do not like those long resume citing introductions where you go through a list of people's many awards and shows and prizes and books and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to do it a little differently. I'm going to talk about what these two speakers mean to us. Besides, you all know about Mickalene's gallery shows and her museum shows and all her critical acclaim, and you know about her as an artist and a photographer and a curator and a producer and many other things. Otherwise you wouldn't be here probably. So I will just tell you that, first of all, for us, she's a great friend to the New York Academy of Art. She's incredibly generous with her time and her support, in spite of her dramatic rise in the art world over the past many years. I would say she is a real thinker. She is somebody who's caring and supportive. She's definitely a mentor to emerging artists, which means a lot to a place like this. And she was our honoree at Tribeca Ball, our big fundraiser in 2018. It was one of the highlights of my time at the school, and she helped us raise a lot of money and establish a scholarship in her name at the school. So, she's known as an artist who examines the complexities, the intersecting complexities of being black and female. But I'd put it this way. She's somebody who's willing to tell her own truth in a way that is universal and inspirational for people everywhere. So welcome, Mickalene, and come on up. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna shortcut Jerry's resume as well, because you all already know about his best-selling books and his Pulitzer Prize and other awards and his many years as an art critic for New York Magazine. And this talk wouldn't have filled up in 10 minutes after opening up the site if it weren't for the fact that you already know and love him. So what does he mean to us? He has been a part of our scene for over a decade, a participant in our community. We honored him along with the legendary writer Tom Wolfe in 2015 at Take Home a Nude, and had a ball, and again, he helped us raise a ton of money for scholarships and programming at the school. And as a community of emerging artists, we love to listen to him both scold and encourage artists who are trying to make their way, inspiring them to let go of their fear and just get going. I think he always calls them, "you big babies." And I like the irreverence and the utter seriousness he brings to his work. His ability to distill a piece of art down to its fundamental essence. I admire the way he eschews the social scene to focus on writing. He doesn't seek the limelight. This is kind of torture for him tonight. He sort of avoids it, but he is very much the real deal, and we are thrilled to have you with us, Jerry. Come on up.
New York Academy of Art in the house. All right. Thank you all for coming. It's an honor to be here. It's an incredible honor for me to be speaking with Mickalene. I'm a huge fan of your work.
Are you really?
Enormous. Why, does it not seem that I haven't been?
Well, this is our first time having a conversation.
Say what?
This is our first time having a conversation.
This is our first conversation. It's because I'm nervous. And so are you.
Yeah, I'm nervous too.
I don't go out much. We're not here to talk about me. Your work is like a brick thrown through the window of art history to me. It absolutely is full-on, brazen, confident, incredible color. What you do with women, black women, queer bodies, not that I ever really quite know what that is, but these are all identities. What you've done with the building of paintings, you make these amazing painting machines that just start generating all this dynamic stuff. I think in some ways, you are the greatest, one of the greatest cubists.
No, you were right.
Of
Go
all
back,
time.
rewind.
And also one of the great pop artists of all time. Toni Morrison teaches us that even though she didn't write in the modernist period, she is the greatest modernist writer. And I think that your work transcends the psychosis of modernism, that it would be all male and all white, and I never even knew that until recently, that it was all white. And yet, I wanted to ask you, with all of your accolades and all the amazing accomplishments and fears and whatever, the confidence, all of it, why do you think you've never been in a Whitney biennial? And I've been waiting, and I've complained about it, but I think I once might have said it to you online or something.
Yeah, you did.
I did.
Yeah, you did. You said, "What's wrong with them? Why aren't you in the Whitney biennial?" I don't know why half the people are not in the Whitney biennial, but I can't answer that question. I think the curators that usually are selected aren't looking and thinking of my work at the breadth that it is. They're just looking at it very one-sided, and they're looking at it in a limited scope, in a way in which they don't really understand the sort of the way in which I really bring in all sorts of complications with, different genre of art, and ways in which I complicate the space. And I think they're only thinking of one body of work. So when they think of Mickalene Thomas, they're thinking of Le Déjeuner. And so that's what is sort of a sediment in their mind when they think of me, when they're not looking at like all the different series and the different bodies of work that I work within, from photography to collage to installation, performance, and creating immersive spaces, creating video and film, my film works. Mm-hmm. And so I think most curators are lazy.
Are what?
Lazy.
Yeah.
And I think most of them are really following. When I think of a curator, my hope that a curator is someone who has an idea, right? And they take that idea that they have and they want to create a dissertation or sort of research around it, and they want to build a body of work and exhibition around that idea. Most of the times what I see is the same conversation because of comfort, right?
Comfort.
And there's not enough risk-taking, and that could be because of the institutions not allowing that freedom for them to do that. I don't know, but I think a lot of curators are not really stepping outside of the parameters and the sort of the boxes that exist, and they're staying confined, and they're usually choosing artists that seem safe, and oftentimes, and I think also, my work isn't easy.
No,
it's not easy. And I think, and they don't often understand it. And I think, when it comes to acknowledging and validating the Black body, right? That's a way of them sort of giving that sort of resonance of that, they're also acknowledging that these images need to be seen. And I still think our society is not ready for that.
Your work makes me think that, combined with what you're saying about the Whitney, and I know I have a vague memory of you writing me back going, it's no problem.
Yeah, it's because it's not something that I aspire to. If it happens, great. If it doesn't define me. It doesn't necessarily, it's not on my list. I took that off my list a long time ago. Yeah. So I don't expect it. It doesn't give me the inspiration to get into my studio every day. It doesn't allow me to sort of generate my ideas. So I don't necessarily need those type of accolades to validate what I do and why I make the art I make.
I think that what I think is that part of it is they're only looking at subject matter. And while you have the right subject matter, that you nail. Your ideas of what a painting is, formally, they have no idea. It's like an atomic bomb they're witnessing.
Because I put everything in it.
You put everything in it.
Everything in it. I think it's, one reasons why I create the spaces I create in my paintings, sort of the complication of the perspective and the foreground and the background, is because I'm pulling from various genres of art practices. And I'm looking at those art practices and I'm asking questions and I'm proposing those questions formally and compositionally to the viewer to see where they fit in and how they can navigate through these complicated spaces, because our world is complicated, right? We are bombarded with so many things. So what is painting today?
Yeah.
Right? And when you have so many resources as an artist, and you're confronted with the access of images, what is painting? Like, you can really make anything today, and you can pull from any particular historical period. You can tell your story, your narrative. There's so much you can do with that. And, but then it doesn't just stop there. You have to really think about the formal aspects of what you're doing. The theories and concepts will be there, right? Everyone can go from a personal, conceptual, a theoretical, way of what inspired them, the impetus to make the work. But in the end, it is about the formal aspects, right? And I'm interested in sort of like boxing with those, as you will. I'm interested in getting in the ring with those artists and contending with them, whether they're a French Impressionists or artists from the Harlem Renaissance period or like Western sort of classic painting. Like, I'm really interested in saying, okay, get in the ring with me.
Yeah.
And let's see what we can create from this sparring.
And you, again, they're looking at only the subject matter, but you are using incredible patterns, materials, surfaces. You never stay in your own lane. You're never.
Well, that's too easy to stay in your own lane.
Yeah.
I think I like to feel with my own work uncomfortable. I like to feel that there's a mystical aspect to the work that's kind of out of my control.
Yeah.
And that only comes from the making of the work and the complication of creating these hybrids and sort of other things that can come in and sort of disrupt your own practice and your own system. So when I feel like I'm adhering to a particular model or a system within my work, I kind of, in my own way, no one needs to tell me to tie my hand behind my back, right? Because you're getting too comfortable. I do that myself.
Right.
I allow the work to organically evolve and say, okay, you've done this too many times, now what? It's like the same conversation, and are they hearing you? You know what I mean? And so if it's not going anywhere, you have to allow yourself to push up against your own work to create something new. And I think my work really grows out of the creative act of making the work itself.
Very much. And yet you do have, I know, some assistants working in your small, relatively small studio.
Small?
Well, I don't know. It looks about the size, half, 2/3.
It's about this size.
It is? It's big. I'm sorry.
But I do have a small team. I have a really incredible small team.
Is any of them here tonight?
No, I think one was going to come, but I had
Okay.
an unfortunate
right.
family situation.
Okay.
But I have a small team, and some of them work with me from 3 years to 13 years.
Amazing.
So, it's a really incredible group of people. They're artists themselves, and their own practices are through silkscreen. They're mostly printmakers. I think printmakers are really interested to work with because of their way of making an image and the process and
sure.
what printmaking does as far as your thought process with how you, whether you're doing silkscreen or lithography or etching, there is a system, but there's these tools you use, and there's ways and methodologies that you have to adhere to execute the work. And so for me, I love that process and use that a lot with sort of painting formalities.
They're process obsessed, and they tend to be very good at it. You know, you mentioned...
And there's like this methodical, sort of meticulous way of thinking about the image and how to push up against it. And I think oftentimes printmakers and printmaking isn't as considered on the level as it should when it comes to painting or drawing.
I totally agree with you, and I think that has to do with the fickleness and this weirdness of the market, and that I don't understand. And
But Andy Warhol, the foundation makes most of its money off its prints.
that's true, and that's important.
No, it's true. I mean, that's what keeps that foundation going is the printmaking.
In the same way that one of the foundational works of modernism is pottery in Duchamp's urinal. The art world gets so weird that we pronounce painting dead, the author is dead.
But painting would never die. I mean, I think
Right.
painting would never die, but what I find very exciting about other tools of technology, when you think about, even AI or just like painting or photo tools like Photoshop, of how digital processes have entered into ways in which artists are making their paintings, right?
They're tools.
Yeah, they're just new tools of ways of seeing and thinking about space, and allowing you to think about your space and that platform and how you would use that out into the world and pull from that and ascertain it and then bring it back into your own work. And I think when you think of photography is now so much more accessible to us, right? There's so many just like boating photographers. Everyone has a mobile device on our phones. We're all taking pictures. So the accessibility to the image has now made us closer to it, right? And it's shifted that.
Yeah.
So now painting is in close proximity to photography.
True.
But now it's competing with that, right? Most paintings today is about who we are. Look around the room, right? It's all images of people and the other and experience and cultural and narratives. We now want to see ourselves multiplied even more. Mm-hmm. And so, if anything, photography is giving painting a run for its sort of historical lens in the world, because it's pushing up against that.
That's brilliant. I wanted to go back to one thing about your work, too, that the women in your work, to me, are quite extraordinary. I find myself attracted to them.
Okay, that's good.
They're very.
That's part of the attempt. Is to make people attracted to
and
them.
I think that's part of what makes people a little nervous about your work, and that it's not just sort of sensual, because it is sensual, but it's actually very sexual to me. It's very brash. It's, like I said, brazen. But who were the women, if you could tell the audience? I don't know if you know who Mickalene was painting.
I mean, most of them were friends. Only 3 out of the 12 or 13 models that I have worked with have been partners.
Mm-hmm. You've painted your own partners.
Yeah, I have.
No, I know this, and
Yeah.
I just, wanted to put a little accent on it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to stay away from that, though.
Okay. There's one of her having sex with somebody, but you can't see it.
There's not one me having sex with anyone.
There what?
No, there's no paintings. You're looking at, there's a different artist. Okay.
No, okay, but goodbye. No, there seemed to be,
No, there's no works
no
of...
depictions of sex. No.
Never.
Never. No.
No. I did reinterpret these paintings sleep, but that's not me.
No.
No, it's not me.
No.
They're models.
Okay.
They were hired models from who worked at Pratt
Right.
for nude modeling.
And
So
you-
oftentimes I, would hire professional models because professional models, when they work in schools like here or Pratt or SVA or Parsons, they're comfortable with sort of being in a nude, so it's easier to sort of hire them and photograph them. And I didn't feel right or comfortable asking friends to pose nude.
Yeah.
So I worked with hired models who did that as a profession.
And you worked famously with your mother.
Yes.
And that's quite
Who you see exposed a little, in the nude. And there are some of the models that I've worked with who, within lingerie, are slightly undone, but not fully nude. The earlier works, it was me in the nude, much earlier. But there's no sex.
No. I didn't mean it that way, but
You mean you feel sex?
Yes.
Oh, you feel sexy.
Yeah, the moment after, two lovers are in bed and stuff like that. But that's me, and I've ruined.
That's what you get from which images?
I'm not
Do you know
remembering because I'm a wreck.
Why are they? What happened to the images?
Damn images on.
Why are we still seeing New York Academy?
So when is this painting? I thought it was going really well.
This was going well. I'm like, why they're sitting up here watching New York Academy of the Arts.
What is the title of this painting? Because it
Le
is a
Déjeuner sur
killer.
l'herbe. Yeah, Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe. Luncheon in the Grass. It was made in 2010. My first large scale painting that was commissioned slightly by MoMA for the modern art window. Klaus Biesenbach had, when he was working with MoMA, invited me to do a presentation at the museum, but it was going to be in the window at the Modern. Mm-hmm. And so at that time, I was not working in a large scale, so it was a challenge. And so I went to the museum, photographed the models. They were all photographed site-specifically at the MoMA. Like, we went there. It was also the first time that I photographed my models outside of my studio.
Wow.
And it was in a sculpture garden right in front of the Matisse bronze sculptures, which is in the back.
I think I see the one right in the dead
so
center.
that becomes the fourth figure.
Yeah.
And I was very excited about that sort of multi-layering of historical art figures from Manet and Matisse entering into the painting.
Yeah.
But these are 3 models that I've worked with for many years, and from Kuskaza Den and Onode. So these are 3 models that I continue to work with.
And what causes the painting to seem, why is it irregularly shaped? It's enormous. How big is it? Like
It is 10 by 24 feet.
24 feet.
Yeah.
That's a
so
big
10 feet
painting.
high and 24 feet long.
And it comes on, it's just throwing elbows at you. It just really comes on strong.
And it's made into 6 panels. And 3 separate parts together. So this section is in 2 parts because I couldn't fit it into my studio at the time. So I actually didn't see the painting fully installed until it was installed at the Modern because I didn't have a wall big enough to actually make the entire painting, so I had to make it in sections.
And so the hair might be made out of rhinestones?
The hair is everything. My process is I create a photograph. After that photograph, I make a collage. After that collage, or I make series of collages, I use collage as a way of sort of understanding the mode of construct, but also just the space. And it really works as a way of drawing for me and a way of figuring out and understanding a story or sort of an image or really the model that I'm working with or what am I trying to convey here. And it's about memory and time for me. And so...
In what sense, memory and time? These weird shifts and
Yeah,
glitches?
these weird shifts because I made the photograph, but now it's like once I'm using the photography, the photographic image, now I'm collaging them. So without... really thinking about the image, I'm just recontextualizing the image and making it again. And from that, and I would usually do like a series of 2 to 3 collages before deciding on which one would be for the painting. Mm-hmm. So this is actually a composite of maybe 2 or 3 collages, the background and the figures themselves. And once I realized the scale of the space, I knew that I wanted to be 10 by 24 feet.
Jesus.
But at first I just did them in sections and based on the collage itself. The original collage is only about 8 by 10 inches.
And you scale it all the way up like that.
And I scale it up.
Amazing. And did you add any panels to make it longer, or the scale worked out from small to large this way?
It just worked out this way because
Wow.
I have a, comprehensive understanding of space and a scale shift.
It's again
Based on that, but that's based on experience.
Yeah.
I think I've always worked large, and for me, working in scale is really important because I knew I wanted to have my work really contend with monumentality, but also abstract expressionism, right? I always think of myself more as an image maker than a figurative painter.
Yes.
Like I'm not a Eric Fischl painter, or, you know what I mean? I'm not a painter like these incredible paintings
Right.
here on the wall. I think they're very talented, but I'm not a figure painter.
No.
I'm an image maker, and I love using the figure as sort of a conduit for my idea. In the same way as when I say I'm an image maker is because I really think about my work in abstraction more than figuration. So I'm not thinking so much about the figure in ways in which people are looking and seeing, because painting a figure in sort of a traditional sense, it's really about how you see things.
Yeah.
And I don't see things that way. I see things very sort of layered all the time.
Yeah, from one angle you're looking up, you're looking down, you're looking left, you're looking right. It's an extraordinary... Who owns this painting? Unless I should not ask.
Yeah, you can. It's public. The Lehmans, Rochelle and Jean-Pierre Lehman from Lehman Maupin Gallery.
Okay.
It was unfortunate. MoMA was supposed to buy. They were supposed to buy the painting, and they reserved it for about 4 years in their acquisition, and then they decided not to buy it.
But why? I'm not putting you on the spot, but, why? Because they're scared?
Because you have people in positions who don't see the value of the work enough that it's deserving of the particular spaces. Now they do.
Now they do.
Now they do.
And
they
they
would like,
coulda-
so, and often because you don't have certain people who look like me in the room sitting at the table who are advocating for us to be in those spaces.
That's
so,
true.
So when you don't have us in the room, or on the board, or as the trustees, then those acquisitions are really hard to push through. Even though you might have one person who is really sort of cheerleading for the artist to be in the space. So this is the second largest at that time. This is only 9 by 12, so it's half the size.
What year is this?
2010 as well.
10.
2010.
Okay. And who's the model?
Maya.
And so she's sort of in an Olympia-like, or Courbet or pose.
Yeah.
And what's going on here?
What's going on here is her claiming a space as the model in the original Grand Odalisque, Manet's painting. And for me, I really, when I made this painting, it was for an exhibition that I was in at Rona Hoffman Gallery. And I wanted, after making the Le Déjeuner, I realized that it gave me the sort of like the validation and sort of the courage really to start making nude paintings on a larger scale, because I really wanted, it's more for me about how the viewer sort of is confronted with the sitter, right? And I knew that having this figure, this beautiful black female body, and sort of the same historical pose as a classic icon like Grand Odalisque would sort of send a message to like the notions of beauty.
And in 2010, this message, I think, came over and wasn't quite received.
No.
Like, these are... Look, I think there is a psychosis of modernism.
No, it wasn't quite received. People were like a little apprehensive with it, and just like, what is she making? But it took one incredible collector who is anonymous who bought it and donated it to the Brooklyn Museum.
Fantastic. I actually think I don't want to get on a sidebar, but your work represents an incredible hinge moment where, and I think that you're part of it, breaking down the walls of what I think of as an era of white aesthetics, which would have been roughly the last 100 years plus, where I did not even know how racist and exclusionary the art world was.
It still is.
And it still is.
It still is in a big way. And
Could you talk about that?
Well, things have changed, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in many spaces, but there's still a lot of complication with like disparity, right? Disparity in a sense of equity and what's equitable for artists, and sort of like what we're worth, right? Because you can have an artist like me requiring the same treatment, but then when we're requiring that, then we're treated as we're being difficult, right, or challenging.
Have you bumped into that?
Oh yeah, I do all the time. And so we're butting up against that. Like, and also I have currently a touring exhibition that opens in May of this year. And
Where?
it's at the Rhode in May 23rd.
Go to
and
Los
then it goes
Angeles.
to the Barnes and the Hayward. But you would think that by now there would be many museums wanting to have my show. And it's still very challenging to get museums to accept my work. And I've often been told that their audience, the demographic's not ready for it. It's challenging. We can't show nudes. There's always some level of excuse. And to be quite frankly, what I really take that as, we're not ready to see black bodies in these spaces. We're not ready, not only black bodies, we're not ready to see black women elevated on that level in these spaces.
To own that space.
But we're only willing to see them, handing flowers to others, right? Or serving others. But we're not ready to see them as the one who is desired, right? And so for me, that's the message I get when we go to museums. And these are museums who even have my work in their collections. You would think that there's an opportunity for this work to be seen on a grand level, on a larger platform for an audience that is deserving of seeing it, right? But it's still challenging. It's still sort of fight and sort of a way of like having to convince why they should see, why this work needs to be seen.
And you don't paint black bodies in pain and torture.
No, it's about, I'm not interested in, in trauma. And not that trauma doesn't deserve a space and recognition. There's so much trauma already and chaos in the world that I'm really interested in really pulling out sort of specific narratives about celebrating and about joy and excellence, and also just mostly about the state of leisure, because, the fortitude for leisure is not necessarily one is considered when you think of black bodies, right? We're looked at as the laborers, we're looked as the workers, we're looked as sort of the caretakers, right? We're not looking at us in the state of rest or leisure. And so for me to personify these women in sort of the same repose as sort of these white women in these classical sort of, gestures, is me claiming that space.
Yes.
And dignifying sort of my sitters in the same way of that we too are deserving of this state of leisure.
And you're also painting these black female bodies in a, not outside generally, I don't think, and they're interiors, domestic in that sense. And that to me echoes something, a sort of a historical idea where a black man might leave the family and go out and become a gangster or a god or a businessman and hit the road.
A god, you said?
A god, whatever.
Okay.
I'm saying from high to low.
You went from gangster to god. That's like weird.
A minor deity, where women kept the black family together, and they stayed home.
That's common. I mean, it was common in my sort of familial, where I was surrounded by an incredible group of women, and I was surrounded by a credible group of men who are doing quite well. But black people are more than that. You know what I mean? And I think oftentimes people want to box us in and put us in sort of these compartments. Yeah. But I think, we're cut from various cloths, right? And I think, and have contributed to the world in incredible ways. And so I think until we get to a period where we start looking at us all as human beings and not everything as a black and white, we're going to continue to have the problems we have in the world.
Agreed.
Right? And we're going to continue to be fighting up the same sort of notions, even though we're moving ahead. Like, yes, I'm not dealing with or confronted with the same issues my grandmother, my great-grandmother have dealt with, or even my mother, right? And I have a lot more freedom, right? I'm an artist today sitting up here having a conversation with you. You know what I mean? I'm have a luxury of life in many ways. I'm sitting up here with Gucci. I'm talking,
Great
so
style.
you can't deny these things, that things have changed, right? But that's just surface, right? these things have changed, but when you look in the world and you look around you and see things and you go, have they really? Especially when you have DEIs going into these institutions and now they're being sort of like, shut down.
That's true.
Now it's like, okay, we had DEI, we had diversity, equity, inclusion. Now we're going to remove these because we don't need it anymore.
Because
right?
we've attained it, it's fine.
It's a limited scope. It's all, sort of the needle just moves a little, people get comfortable, and then we default back to sort of, it's like we default back to our bad behavior that we haven't learned.
Yeah.
Because to be truth, we should not be in this situation, even politically, where Trump is even a part of our conversation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That where he's even running. And so as a human being in society, we only have to blame ourselves that we are going backwards, right? We're dealing with, when you think about even like, Planned Parenthood and all of these things of like, body autonomy and women's bodies. Why are we having these conversations?
Right.
We should be so further ahead, in our society, and we're not. So there's a major problem here. And so to think that, yeah, I'm doing great as an artist and there's no complaint, but a lot of people have not seen this work.
That's true.
There's a misconception that there's a great platform for people seeing the work because people are still not ready to see a black body like this on the scale as they are seeing Eric Fischel's bodies.
That's very true. I want to make one little observation about this that I noticed that, there's a great show by Cindy Sherman up where she's collaging different eyes into the face.
I did it first, though.
You did it first. What year is this?
This is, I think, 2015, 16.
And this is a beauty. That's a photograph.
This is actually Shanique Smith, the artist. I said, this is the artist, Shanique Smith. I actually think this is the installation shot from the Brooklyn Museum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a conversation, the stuff you were just talking about, that you have with other artists and other black artists?
I wouldn't necessarily, not necessarily black artists, mostly like black female artists.
Black women artists.
Black women artists.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mostly black women artists.
And how do you, nobody ever would ask me this question. What identity am I? How do I define myself? But you're forced to answer what are you? Are you an artist? Are you a black artist? Are you a queer artist? Are you all of them?
I'm just an artist.
That's right.
But I am all of those things as well.
Right.
And there's often times where I have to represent one of them. And I'm proud of representing all of them and choosing to represent one of them when it's necessary. Yeah. Because you have to. Sometimes you have to show up and say, I'm a black artist and there's a reason why I'm making this work, right? But that doesn't define me, right? And I think oftentimes we want to have these conversations and we want to compartmentalize and put things in boxes because people are not comfortable with being uncomfortable. Right? They're wanting to always have things be a certain way. And so in order to do that, for their own need, they're wanting to put you in a category for themselves. It's not because of you, it's for themselves.
That's true. One of my identities is I'm a short art critic. And I never even know that until I leave the building.
Or you stand next to me.
Or when I'm next to you. Now, this is part of a great thing, and I'd love you to talk about this.
Oh,
this was
particular
at the
work.
new museum?
It showed at several spaces. It first showed at Aspen Art Museum, and then it showed at Spelman. And then it showed at MoCA, LA MoCA. Wow. And then it showed at Untitled in Switzerland. But I think this is this the one at the New Museum? I think so. This was a series of video photo collages that I was making on 12 monitors. There are these Detronic old televisions. And I had the initial idea was for it to be this massive flat screen for Untitled. I did this proposal for my gallery that I was invited to be one of the artists for Untitled. Untitled is usually a special sort of selection in the art fair where you're selected as an artist to present a proposed work.
In Basel?
And this was Basel, Switzerland. And so I had proposed this idea of this multi-channeled screen of me as this odalisque with these moving images showing this historical relationship with the nude body.
Right.
It was accepted, but it was so expensive that we couldn't afford it, so I had to do it in a very downsize and end up creating an immersive interior space for it where people can walk in and see it, which became actually much more profound because it became very intimate. You were one-to-one. I was looking a lot at Chuck Close at the time and his long-figured nudes.
The first painting that Chuck Close ever made was an enormous nude.
Yeah.
Like this pose, but from the other direction.
From the other direction. And so I love that body of work. It's one of my favorite bodies of work of Chuck Close.
Yeah.
And I remember always thinking if I could ever have the opportunity, I'm going to have a big black body like that to contend with. And I wanted it to be me. I didn't want to ask anyone else to pose in this position. And I knew that it had to be my body. It had to be how I see myself in relationship to images in art history. And so it is a montage of images. And basically, a lot of the images that you see are scraps from my collage table and just fabric that I had in my studio. And so I had a video camera set up, one at HD and one at Super 8 set up, and I would lay on a couch and just lay there and videotape myself, just gazing out. And so also I decided to put this narrative video recording of Eartha Kitt, where she is talking about herself as Eartha May, which is her name, and how she transforms from Eartha May to Eartha Kitt, and how her black body in space is used to navigate the world. And it's a very harrowing, vulnerable, intense narration.
Yeah.
Very personal. She's revealing a lot of personal sort of story about herself, about love, about how she's seen in the world when she's Eartha May versus when she's Eartha Kitt. And Eartha Kitt is someone that I use as a theoretical thread in my work since graduate school. And so I often take her lyrics and her song and create work around it. And so it was kind of that juxtaposition and intersection of this narration and sort of the black bodies and how the complications with that is there's no real answers, it's mostly questions. Mm-hmm. So this is basically asking, so you have, on the reel, you'll have different images of historical reposes of, like, I think there's one with Manet, all of them come in there, Courbet, and then there's one of Grace Jones that comes through, and so pulling from these various iconic images of sort of black women and white women and how we see them in the world, and it just kind of this kaleidoscope of images that intertwine. So it's a moving collage. It's a video. It's one of my first moving video collages, and it's people respond well to it.
It blew me away. I have a memory of a singer appears in it, and
Yeah.
How are we doing on time? I don't hear.
It's 7:26.
And what does that mean?
Oh, that was fine. That was fast.
That seems so fast, and this is so amazing. We're going to talk about this because this is an amazing work of art. It's out of control.
I love this piece.
It's amazing. What's the
It's
title?
wild. It's so sick. So maybe this is what you're talking about when you talk about sexy, or when you feel sexy, or sexual, or sexual energy.
Yeah.
Or satisfied. Something. I don't know.
I have a tingle. What's going on there? Get this off of me.
What's going on is bathos.
What?
Bathos. I was looking at bathos and thinking of the guitar lesson, and I mean, he's kind of perverted, right?
Yes.
And so I was really wanting to, I think this is when I'm being queer or a black lesbian, I think, in art, but not necessarily hitting you over the head with it. Yeah. Really bringing the sensuality and sort of sensual nature of sort of love between two women, and what that may feel or look like without revealing anything. Just sort of a touch, like the touch of her leg, and sort of, the elongation of sort of that notion of desire. I'm very interested in black erotica. I'm interested in black erotica film and photography and storytelling, and I'm interested in how those also afford a sort of space of leisure for black women, and how you getting sense of gratification and knowing sort of your own desires and your own body is very important. And so this was that journey for me. It was a way to explore that into the work through my photographic images without saying, but using specific historical images to tell that story. Yeah. For me, it's very important to pull from various histories to enter conversation or discourse.
You have really entered it. That's
Yeah.
what I think I meant by that you're like a brick through the window. At the same time, you're a very subtle artist. You're not super didactic. There's no clear one meaning. There's multiple.
Yeah, because a lot of people, they look at this and they probably wouldn't think that it's coming from the guitar lesson. I don't know. But
there's people in this room that miss that.
But it's a direct, if you look at the composition of his work, this is actually taken from that.
Yeah.
The same exact position. So I would have the books open in my studio. This was a tableau or installation in the corner of my studio at the time. I would go to such lengths of building up the interior with the fabrics and throwing them. At this time, I couldn't afford to upholster the furniture, so I would just throw the fabric and lay it across it. Now I do my own upholstering and do all of that. But at the time, it was just too... I wanted a more immediacy, so it was easier for me to just lay the fabric over furniture that I would get from like Salvation Army or something, and then to reupholster it. And I just kind of like how it got a little messy with the composition as well.
It's mad. I think you're one of the great interior designers of our time, and I actually think you should be like designing a club or the train station.
People ask me, and oftentimes I say no.
Okay, bad idea.
No, but I mean, I did study interior design, so interior design was one of my minors when I was at Pratt Institute.
And I guess
they had a dual program when I entered, so you can do painting and interior design, painting and industrial design, and I was doing painting and interior design my first 2 years until they stopped that dual program. So that's where a lot of the interior design comes in. So you're not wrong.
Thank God. I have two quick questions before I close. One is, I was so thrilled when the New York Academy of Art contacted me and said, would you like to interview Mickalene? And they
I chose you.
They added that you wanted me.
I did.
And I have to ask, I feel that we're similar on some weird level.
I follow you. I like you so much.
I like you so much too.
And I think, I don't know, I always like, I want to talk to Jerry Saltz. I mean, I think you are a very important person in our time. I think you're pop as well. I think you are not afraid to speak about all sorts of things and point them out, being provocative. I don't think we have enough people like you in the world to allow us to see things in a different way. Yeah. And I think, and I appreciate that. And I can appreciate what you bring to the conversations of allowing people to just see different and say, get over yourself. You know, like often like just get over it. And like, why aren't we having fun sometimes?
Yeah.
And so it's a reminder when I see you in the kitchen and you're cooking with Roberta and stuff like that.
Sorry.
You know, and it's good. And I think, you know, hopefully others will learn from that.
I really hope so. And I know we both believe in being freedom machines. Like we're only here a brief time, do everything, don't stay in your lane.
No. You have to, I think that would be one of my advice to a lot of artists that are in the room, is to, in your studios, experiment as much. Don't get so fixed. Like, don't get so focused on like an idea. You know, don't get so like comfortable with how you make things, or used to, you know, like challenge yourself, like, because the outside world's not going to challenge you. You have to be your own critic. You have to sort of get your own train off your tracks and make a different turn. And you have to be willing to trip over your own shoelaces in your studio and allow some of those things to mishap or be your failure and like not understand and just like, you know, scream at your own work and throw your brush to it. Like, you have to do those things, and you have to say, I'm going to throw this wad of toilet paper to the wall and see if it sticks, right? And that experimentation is crucial, because the work, I can tell you, all the work that I'm making is from all my experimentation in undergrad and graduate school. It's come back into my work. And I look at my journal and I say, oh, now I'm doing those things that I was experimenting with years ago. But if you don't experiment, if you're not willing to sort of try these things, you're not going to allow your work to organically grow where you're not making the same thing, right? And I have a lot of different bodies of work. And it's not like I'm deciding, oh, I want to make a photograph, I want to do a video, I want to do film, I want to do sculpture. It organically pushes me into those directions because of the experimentation, because I'm not afraid to sort of like, okay, let me try this in my own work.
And boy, have you done that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not going to ask the last question. It was about this institution, that I too have a soft spot for this institution, and I love that you do. And I wonder if you would talk.
It's because of David. But I think it's because of David. I think he's incredible, and I think what he's done with the school and how he's really brought people in new voices and new conversations into the program is testament to the growth of the program and like what's happening and also the talent that's coming out of here. And I just really love that he's always in conversation with so many different type of people, right? And I think it's important. And for me, I love what comes out of the school.
Me too.
You know, and there's some great talent here. And I'm excited to work with them next year. I think I'm going to be teaching here next year. And sort of see if I can sort of disrupt some of what people are making figuratively.
Yeah.
And
That's
sort
what
of to
you
think
have to-
about the figure without making the figure. You know, let's do some of that.
That's the job. Job one is you can have this amazing skill that a lot of them have
Yeah.
here. And then you have to figure out what the fuck can I do with
Yeah,
this?
yeah. So that's what my first thing would be, conversation and professional development mostly. But I think, you know, sometimes things can be figurative without having a figure in it. And I think those are ways in which we can really sort of like disrupt sort of how our own beliefs, systems. And so for me, I'm always in my own studio. No one has to tell me that a work is good or bad. I know when it's good or bad,
Yeah.
you know?
And you
So
can, yeah.
I do. I know when it's good work and I know when it's bad work. And if it's work that is in the middle and I'm ready to show it, and I just don't care because it's saying something that I need the audience to experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just that.
And you move on.
And you move on.
To the
but
next.
don't be so, I think right now, artists are so concerned with making something great. You know, I had one artist, teacher, Sam Messer, who said to me, make something or embarrass yourself. Can you make something that where you would feel completely embarrassed? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Right? It means be vulnerable. Make yourself vulnerable. Make the work vulnerable, you know? And when you get to that place, then you're no longer afraid, give a fuck of what people say, you know? Because you are doing it because you've already exposed yourself, right? Artists, we create a gift, we put it out to the world. That's enough is vulnerability, right? We're like, say, look at what I done, you know? And it's, you know, challenging because you don't know if people are going to respond to it or like it.
No.
Nor should you care, but you already did the first thing by putting it on the wall or putting it out in the space. And that is the gift of an artist.
It's almost always true, I find, when I'm most afraid that I push myself into some area that surprises me. And even if I'm ashamed of it, of whatever comes out. So, we're going to have, the most fun part should be the questions, but I'm going to do something. I want short questions. Whatever the fuck you say has to have a question mark at the end of the sentence.
Not a statement, not a comment,
Not statements, not
not periods,
And I'm worried about
not exclamations.
And I'm worried about men in the audience because men have a weird tendency to make long-winded statements. So I'm going to try to choose women. So there was a teacher right there that just to get it started, stand up and say your name and ask your question to Mickalene Thomas, a great artist.
Hi, thank you. Congratulations. And
Thank you.
I'm excited about watching your journey. My name is Emlyn. I'm an artist, New York City educator. And my question is, what advice would you give educators who are trying to disrupt the educational system, what your thoughts are on how we can best support, prepare our students, particularly our students of color, and for this art world who are really looking to continue their journey?
I think expose them to as much art as possible. And a different type of art practices is exposure, exposure, exposure through books, through conversation, going to exhibitions, going to panels, like bring them here, do all as much as possible, because the more they see, the more they know what's possible and what they can do. That's a sense. We're visual people, right? We take in information through our eyes, right? We respond. It's like that's how we learn. When you have a newborn baby, they're not speaking, right? It's all through like all of this, how they're looking at things, right? So if you can expose your students to as much diversity and different time. Like right now, there's a great show at the Met on Harlem Renaissance. Take them all there, right? Like to see that great work of all of those incredible artists from the Harlem Renaissance period. And it shouldn't just be kids of color. It should be, white kids or whatever. They should all see that work, bring them, and they should be in conversation with each other, right? And not afraid, I think important, to talk about the work with each other, even if it's difficult. And I think that's the challenge, because we also always want to sort of not have certain conversations. Those conversations need to be had, and they need to be had at a younger age, because when you're adults like this, then we can sit in a room and tolerate each other and have conversations, right? We can be civic to each other, right? But we learn how to be civic when we're younger. If we don't learn that, then we're not civic to each other. So I always think exposure is very important. That's what it did for me. I was exposed to art at a very young age. My mother didn't have a lot, but I was at the Newark Museum every weekend. She would bring me and my brother even to New York at the Henry Settlement in the Lower East Side. We would go, so for me, I didn't know I wanted to be an artist at that time. I thought I was going to be a lawyer, right? But I ended up being an artist because it was that exposure to art at a young age that was so impressionable, right? And it left, me really thinking about it. And then I see Carrie Mae Weems' work, and it was like, wow, this is what art can do. It was this connection to it. So if kids don't have connection to different type of images and different ways of making things, they don't know what tools they can use to express themselves.
Great. Next question. Katie Hammer is an art critic in the white and the black hat, said something to me earlier about criticism, and I wonder if you wouldn't mind repeating it and asking Mickalene about it. Where's the microphone? Oops. Did I just take it away from somebody?
Yes.
Okay, you're next. I didn't see.
That's all right.
Oh, because the poll's right
yeah,
there.
I'm right behind the pole. It's okay.
Go ahead.
My name is Kaja. I'm a professional ballet dancer.
That's
Wow.
great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right? Come on.
Thank you. I just wanted to know, how do you self-preserve when you bump up against microaggressions in your industry?
That's a very good question.
Could you repeat the question?
How do you self-preserve when you butt up against microaggression? I heard it.
How do you self-preserve when you bump up against microaggressions in your industry?
I don't take it personal. I don't. You can't. And oftentimes it's not about me, right? It's not about me or anyone else, and it's about them being unlearned, and unaware. And so I think for me, it depends on the situation, how I can navigate it. And I often think, can I turn this into a win-win, or is this going to be a win-lose? And that what goes into my mind. Is it worth bringing this towards a win-win, or should it just be, so you have to ask yourself, and sometimes I'm in that space of how will I benefit from, or what will I benefit from if I try to shift this. Because the question would be for me, is it worth it? So that's how I butt up. I sort of weigh it out. Is the challenge worth it or not? And oftentimes it is, and oftentimes it isn't, and it's just like you have to move, away. You kind of sideswipe it and go, okay, because they're going to always be out there. It's not going to change. I'm not trying to change them. All I can do is change myself, right? And all I can do is, it's not about what they're doing, it's how I react to it. It's how I choose to react to what they're doing. Do I want to take that energy on? Do I want to bring it into my space? Do I want to sort of carry it as a burden? Do I want it to hinder me? Or do I want to take it and use it as fuel and show them that I'll fucking show you the difference? So it's like, how do you use it for yourself? And I can tell you, a lot of my failures, a lot of my naysays, a lot of my no's have gotten me here because I was like, okay. And I don't verbally tell them. I just look, I say, okay, I'll show you. And just do the work. Because in the end, it's about the work. And I think a lot of people forget that if you don't have the work, it doesn't really matter. If you're not really putting the practice is not about being perfect. It's about just, making it something that's usable for yourself, And for me, it's really about the work. And although I am an artist that have assistants, but I'm in my studio all the time. Like even before coming here, before picking up my daughter, went to my studio. I was like back and forth from, New York to Brooklyn like 3 times today, and because I came to, with my Pratt Forward that's about to start next week. I was at Silver Arts, and then I went to Brooklyn. I came back for lunch and went back, came out my door. But it's like checking in and doing as much little work at a time. Because oftentimes people think that the work is about making. It's not. It's about also thinking and being and considering and research. That also builds the foundation for your practice. Because oftentimes the art world's so transactional that it's not about producing. It's about like, okay, and I always tell people, go to your studio every day, even if you're just sitting in front of your work. Because as soon as you're not connecting to your work will show you, when you don't respond to it. It's like energy, right? The time you put into it. But as far as microaggressions, I just I don't take on the energy. And that's learned through experiences. Because I have a lot of different type of people in my life who showed me something lovable and joyful and beautiful that I have a great support system. And I think that's how you get through it, is your network and your support system.
Any questions? Yes, you're a man, so keep it short.
It occurred to me because you mentioned the art world's transactional, and so many works by black painters in African diaspora have become objects of tremendous financial speculation, particularly by a white audience. So I just was wondering your thoughts on that.
I mean, yes, but so were Asian artists, so were Iranian artists. It's like, so were Latin artists. They were all, and that has nothing to do with black artists. It has to do with the art market being transactional, period, right? It goes in these flux and waves of like moments of what they're deeming as important at that time, I remember 10 years ago, it was all the rave about Asian art. Same, and then it was, South America, it was like Latin art. So it's like, it goes through these things. And so it's just testament that it is transactional, and it's about speculation in the market. It has nothing to do with a moment for black artists. And I think that's unfair and very short-sighted, because that's what people want to look like, forgetting that 5 years, 10 years ago, this market was about Asian art. But no one was saying that. No one said that. No one said, oh, Asian artists or this or that, isn't it? No one sort of pointed that out. It was just something that was happening. But now that it's like we're sort of focused on this market of black artists, it's like conversational all the time, instead of it just being the market, because the market goes into these waves and flux. And that's what happens. Because it was white artists. No one said when it was about white male artists.
That's for sure.
you know, it's like no one said, oh, how do you feel about sort of the market and the gaze of it being transaction? Like I think that's, you know, it's a very complex conversation, because now that many black artists are gaining success through this particular market, and not just black artists and not just black American, it's international through African artists. And I think it's about fucking time, right? And if we can sort of use this moment, because it can shift, and it will shift, it will change, you know. Black artists aren't not going to be on the platform or stage for forever. It's already shifted, you know. It's already changed. So I think we have to really think about what is the market. That's the question. And who runs the market? And why isn't that market diverse? Because if it's diverse, then we're not having these kind of conversations, right? We're not talking about who is sort of the engineers of the market or who the makers of the market are, because it's such a diverse market. And there's opportunity for these markets to grow in that way. When we do have these flux and moments, it's focused on demographics.
Why don't you have a gallery, a main New York gallery? You had one.
I had one. I think a lot of it has to do with me feeling and no longer wanting to be with the gallery that it's not a partnership. Because I think the way galleries are run today, I'm not interested in the archaic and very sort of way in which the structure is about what is representation. And I think it's a new market, it's a new global awareness, and for me, working with a gallery or sort of having a New York gallery, it's about, okay, is this a partnership? If I'm going to give this large percentage, then we should be talking about strategy, we should be talking about like what your partnership and my partnership looks like with my growth as an artist. And oftentimes, those conversations are had in the beginning, but they fall short. So I'm really hoping to work with a gallery that will provide this direction in a way where I'm not looked at an artist as representation, but I'm looked at as a partner with them, because that's in the end what it is.
Wow.
You know, we're the only creative market that gives the percentage to galleries, unlike any other creative markets, right? And so I think it's important for people to work with galleries, and I think representation is good. I do not sit up here, because I do have representation. Right. I just don't have New York representation, and that's by choice. And it's because I want a relationship with a gallery that is going to talk to me about, you know, my estate, you know, financial planning, like all of these stuff. Until we have these conversations, until that right gallery comes along, you know, I'm 53 years old. And for me, I'm thinking about, okay, what does my work look like when I'm 63 or 70? You know what I mean? And if I'm going to work with a gallery, that's planning.
Yeah.
You know, it's about planning. It's about strategy. And it's not about being a cash cow, and it's not about sales. It's about a career. And so I'm wanting to work with a gallery that's about holistically working with me on my career as a partner, not an owner.
Incredible. Should we stop now? Katie Hammer. You mentioned something about criticism, and I wonder if you would try to recapitulate it or make it a question.
Well, basically, I had mentioned that in many ways, I think that criticism has left the building. And obviously, you and Roberta aside, and a few others, I guess I'd be curious to ask what your thoughts are on the importance of a critical voice within art media.
Mm-hmm. I think it's very important. I think we have squashed that. We've made people who would be incredibly important as critics in the art world to have an opinion. I think most critics write the same thing, right? They take a narrative, it's a written narrative. Most writers write the same thing. They just Google, they get the information, and most of them want the artist to write it. They're like, okay, here's the questions, answer them. So now I'm writing the article, right? Because I'm answering the questions. I think criticism is about you coming in, looking, and having an opinion.
Yeah.
Right? And writing about what you know historically, conceptually about the world, your experiences, and saying, well, is this really important? And what they're doing. So everything has to be patted on the back. We have to stroke each other. No one can say, that's bad, right? That's not good work. And I think it's a disjustice to us as a society. It's a disjustice to us as creative people, because not all of us are making good work. I don't make good work all the time. Like, really, we don't. We can't. It's impossible. And sometimes, you know what? I may put something out there that's not that good. And there should be people who point that out. You know, and I think, you know, everything's very safe. And I don't think it's healthy for creative growth. Because we're always not going to make good things. Like, an actor's not always going to be their best in the best movie, or there's not going to always be the great photograph made. You know, like, we're going to make ugly things sometimes, or we're going to make things that people just don't understand or agree with. And that's okay, because that's how we learn. But if we're not going to use criticism as those conversations for discourse and historical sort of relevance, because some critics also guide and lead movements, and they have. It's been proven throughout history. That's how different genres of movements have been created, by criticism, and not only criticism by a historian or a writer, by other artists, right? By collectives of artists saying, you know what, no. And then they come together and they make something. It's a call and response. We're human. We respond to each other. And if we sort of cut that part out, then we're not growing.
God damn, that's true. Thank you, Mickalene.
I just have to say thank you so much. And that was such a perfect way to end this talk, because in this school, talking about, you know, feedback being too safe, being not good for creative growth, I think that's what it's all about. Like, that's what we have to do here also, you know, is really confront stuff. And I think this was an amazing, amazing night where such a range of topics were covered, and it was about Mickalene's work, but also about the world around us. And, you know, Jerry, what a masterful job. And I just loved it. You guys are amazing. Thank you.
If you need a selfie with me, or I don't know, Mickalene, no.
Now's the time.
Now is the time. I'm going to stand there, and that's it.
And I'll stand here.
And she's standing there.
Thank you. Thank you.